Welcome to the Law Queen Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Law Queen Podcast with Nicole Lahmani. Nicole is the founder of Lahmani Law, a California personal injury attorney focused on personalized advocacy for individuals and families navigating serious injury, wrongful death, and negligence cases. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Nicole is helping us better understand what makes a serious injury case different from a minor accident claim. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Sean.
Listen, I know this is episode number 1, which is super exciting. Do you want to give me a little background in terms of how did you get where you are? What brought you into this line of work?
Absolutely. So I'm Nicole Lahmani. I was raised in SoCal, California. And really, ever since I was a little girl, I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I used to watch Judge Judy on TV, and I'd look at her and say, ooh, I want to be a judge like that. And then, over time, going through the motions and going to law school, I kind of realized that I much prefer to be on the advocacy end than actually becoming a judge. And so here I am today, day one out of law school. I started my practice. That was 15 years ago. And we represent people involved in serious injuries and help them navigate achieving justice.
I love it. Love it. I'm one of those people who I don't remember what I wanted to be when I was a little kid, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't podcast host, but the job didn't exist then. So I'm excited to get started, and I hope this is the beginning of a great ongoing conversation. Let's start with, we're in California in terms of context. What makes a serious injury case different from a more routine accident claim in California?
I really don't love the word routine accident claim. I think that is a big kind of misnomer that a lot of attorneys use. They think that a lot of claims are real similar or routine, or sometimes you hear about low impact, minimal damage injuries, but that's just not how I work up my cases. I really believe that every individual, every case is different. It's very specific and individual. And, sometimes you get these collisions that are seemingly lower impact or seemingly lower injuries, but the individual has specialized circumstances, what we call here, an egg-shelled plaintiff. So they may have meaningful pre-existing injuries, and that renders them more susceptible to injury. So I don't really think there is a such thing as a, common collision or a more routine collision. I think it's got to be looked at on a really specific individual level to understand what is going on with this person and how do we distinguish that claim from everyone else.
Got it. Oh, that's a great distinction overall. I know too, having been in, even like a routine fender bender, right? It's still oh my God, it shakes you up
Absolutely.
in a big way.
Absolutely. And that term, calling something kind of more routine or more typical or minor impact, these are insurance focused names. This is stuff that was created by the insurance industry. And really, as plaintiffs' attorneys, our job is to humanize the case and to bring that element of compassion and understanding on what's going on that individual level and how it's affected their life to really maximize the value of that case.
Got it. Oh, interesting. Yeah, the system within which we work and the jargon that goes with it.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the types of injuries that tend to create long-term medical, financial, or legal challenges after an accident. Is there a kind of specific set that you see that kind of fall into that?
There are injuries that you see more commonly that stem from collisions or other traumatic events, and there are injuries that you see less frequently, and sometimes it's just an anomaly, and you come across something, you're like, I've never seen this before, and I might never see it again. I think one of the more common categories of injuries are spinal injuries. That's something that we tend to see a lot of. Some people like to classify that as kind of whiplash, those kind of injuries where there's a forward and backward movement of the head and subsequently the spine. But really you need to delve a little bit deeper into the spine to really understand what's going on. So when a chiropractor or a primary care physician classifies something as, a whiplash or a sprain or strain, these are kind of lower level injuries that oftentimes are not taking into account what's really going on inside the spine at a deeper, closer look and analysis. Typically, what you need for that is MRI imaging. You need diagnostic objective imaging to really be able to tell kind of if something more serious is going on the soft tissue components of the spine. Something I tell clients all the time, you cannot see this on an x-ray. X-rays will only show curvature, they'll show fractures, but they won't show those soft tissue components. So if you've got a disc herniation or a disc bulge, you really need an MRI to be able to diagnose that. But more significantly are the symptoms that the patient is feeling. Sometimes, even with clear MRIs, it doesn't mean that they're just totally fine. And that, I think, is where a lot of lawyers get sucked in to that kind of insurance analysis again, because they love to point out, hey, there's no objective findings, so there's no case here. But that's not always the case. Sometimes people have serious symptoms, even though the objective findings are very, very minimal. And that could be for a few reasons. It could be sometimes what we call kind of congenital defects. So the person actually has a different anatomy from other individuals.
Oh,
That can play a role in evaluating the MRI images. And sometimes there are really, really small nerves and neural pathways that can't be seen readily on any imaging, really. So when a patient is experiencing things like what we call radicular complaints, so shooting or numbness pain in the upper extremities or in the lower extremities or weakness, those are very, very serious symptoms. And I think really the lawyers who do their clients the most justice are the ones who understand the medicine, who understand that symptomology and recognize, hey, there's something more serious going on here. Now it's just a matter of me figuring out how to prove that.
hmm. I like it. I like it. Yeah, and there's a story to be told there. But also, interesting that like the science, like you've got to understand the anatomy, the physiology, the uh I mean, you don't have to be a doctor. It's like me, I talk to a lot of attorneys, and I'm by no means uh taking the bar anytime soon. But
Yeah.
obviously you got to have some curiosity and interest in the subject to do your clients justice in all the ways you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I tell them, "Hey, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, but, as it stands, sometimes we play those roles as
Yeah.
lawyers. We've got to hear out what our client's going through. You've got to get into that nitty-gritty and really understand the symptoms. And when you teach yourself, I've done a lot of expert depositions. I've heard from a lot of surgeons and orthopedic surgeons, and you start to really understand how this stuff works. So, this is something that over time you learn about what they're looking for so you can really help your clients in the best way.
Let's talk about losses. Uh, what types of losses can be part of a serious injury case? Beyond medical bills or, oh, I missed work for a week.
Sure. So medical bills are classified really in the category of what we call special damages. And special damages consist of either prior losses in terms of like medical bills, but there's also a whole component of future medical care that oftentimes isn't fully kind of taken into consideration. And that's something that I think, litigators especially will really, really press on, because in terms of damages that a jury finds very tangible and kind of easy to swallow, it tends to encompass those past medical bills, but also that future care. So a lot of times we will have something created by an expert called a life care plan, where
Oh,
basically they will take into account future medical needs, future sometimes surgeries or other procedures that are needed. They will price that out, and it creates a tangible, swallowable form of damages for a jury. So that's kind of in the category of special damages. And then you have what we call general damages. And that's kind of the bread and butter of where we bring in that human emotional component to the case, because that is the pain and suffering damages that people are entitled to. So not only are they entitled to the past pain and suffering for what they've been through from the date of the incident until the present, but they're also entitled to future general damages. So if it is an ongoing issue, if this is a permanent condition, or even just currently ongoing for some extended period of time, we can ask for damages in the form of pain and suffering from now until sometimes the indefinite future. Well, we'll take into account, the longevity and life expectancy, and we will calculate it for life. So those are a couple of the categories. And then, as you touched on, past lost earnings. But again, there's a future component there where if someone can no longer either do the job that they were doing before or work at all, then we might price out indefinitely a future plan, future plan for lost wages, or what we call loss of earning capacity.
So, Nicole, let me ask you this. What can happen to a case if the full impact of an injury isn't immediately clear? I mean, you were just talking about, you were kind of parsing it out into various phases and past and present and future. What are the ramifications of not fully understanding the impact of an injury?
Sure. So this is another kind of pit that a lot of lawyers fall into that is really created by the insurance company. Insurance companies love to focus on this issue of gaps in treatment. And a lot of that has to do with that preliminary time frame between the time of the collision and the time of first treatment. And, don't get me wrong, this is important. The ideal scenario is if you are injured, for someone to call 911 immediately, report that to the officers, take an ambulance, go to ER or go to urgent care. You really don't want to have that delay in seeking treatment. But with that said, I think, a lot of attorneys shy away from those cases. And in my mind, that's not necessarily a deal breaker. So just because someone failed to go to the emergency room the day of the accident or even the following day, sometimes they don't see a doctor for a week or 2 weeks, or in a big impact situation. I've even taken on cases where it's been almost a month until they've seen a doctor. This is not a deal breaker, and you shouldn't let the insurance company convince you of what's going on in your body. So sometimes people have different reasons for not going to the doctor. It might be that, they lost their health insurance and they're kind of afraid of what's going to happen with the bill
Yeah.
if they take an ambulance to the ER. It might be that they just didn't feel the injuries right away. Sometimes you've got adrenaline rushing immediately after the incident, and you're not necessarily feeling the pain of what's going on for days. Sometimes, it could be up to a week before you actually experience that. And then other times people are just kind of trying to troop it out. They're trying to be tough. They're taking over the counter medication. They're not rushing to see a doctor right away because their focus is not building an injury case. And I actually find that to be more credible at times than the person who, immediately rushes to a chiropractor, is immediately trying to talk about suing or creating a case. So it's more organic. It depends on how you frame that. But there are different reasons people might not seek treatment right away, and it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
Yeah. Oh, so I haven't been through this personally, where someone has days later, whatever, weeks later, realized they have an injury, and then they've gone to an attorney, and the attorney might be like, "Yeah, can't help you because of that what you call the gap in treatment," right? That, like,
Right.
what the other another attorney just thinks, well, it's going to be too hard to prove, or what?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you have attorneys who will shy away from difficult cases. That does happen. Sometimes people get to a point in their career where they just want the juicy stuff. I
Yeah. Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
blame them for that, and
Sure.
that's great. But I sometimes think that that's where really good lawyering is done. It's not when the facts are easy. It's not when,
Right.
everything is super clear cut. It's when there are some challenges, there are some discrepancies that you need to explain. And to get a good result for a client, despite those issues, I think is where really good lawyering comes in.
No, well, no, that's great. That's great. Just takeaway for people generally, where, lawyers typically, I think of them as authority figures, and I could see whether it's personal injury or otherwise, thinking I need to talk to a lawyer. Maybe I have a case, and a lawyer says, I don't think you do. Don't be completely discouraged by that because they may not be in that specialty, or they, like you said, they may be a point in their career where like, I'm not looking to work that hard. Um, so
Exactly.
that's
And
great insight.
exactly. And, people shouldn't be discouraged just because you talk to one lawyer doesn't mean you should just quit. I think it's
Yeah.
good to hear from at least a couple of attorneys, 2 to 3 lawyers to make sure, hey, if this is a consistent opinion, through and through, then there may not be something there. But at least, check in with a few attorneys because the last thing you want to do is get discouraged and then stop treating. And now you're really killing your case and making it very, very difficult to pursue.
Okay. Hey, we've got about 4 minutes left. I want to cover two things. So you were talking about insurance companies. I'm curious if there are differences in your dealings with insurance companies in terms of how they handle cases. Whether it's catastrophic injuries or permanent impairment or other substantial damages. Do you have an experience like that where the companies are different, or is it kind of by the book across the board? Everybody's the same.
Sure. I mean, every insurance carrier is a little bit different and they do handle cases differently. So it's helpful when you've got an attorney who's got experience with a lot of different carriers. Carriers are very, very sophisticated in the way that they run claims and they're very organized with their information. So it's important to know that everything that your attorney does, they're keeping track of. They know the lawyers who just settle cases. They know the lawyers who will fight a case in litigation, and they know the lawyers who will go to trial. So they're already aware of who your attorney is, and they will size them up just in the same way that they will size the client up if it's a client who's got a lot of prior claims and that kind of thing. Now, you've got the claims where you're dealing with insurance companies, and then sometimes you're dealing with direct corporations. You're dealing with large
Mm,
corporate entities who handle things in-house. They might be self-insured. They might have a
right.
third-party administrator that helps them run the case. So it really just kind of depends on the dynamic there. But a experienced, seasoned attorney will understand the difference. They will know what to look for and they will know what they need to do to kind of play that insurance game, so to speak, give them the information that they need to really establish your damages to their higher ups. Insurance companies and corporations are very bureaucratic. So you have to understand those inner workings of how they operate and what they're looking for to really establish claims.
Got it. Got it. Well, last question for this episode. And we're talking about high stakes injury cases for the most part. I'm wondering what experience, what resources, or, even legal strategy, what are the most important in a high stakes injury case?
Well, you want to make sure, again, that your attorney is seasoned, is experienced. The insurance carriers know the difference between lawyers who will go to trial and who will not. And even though I would say probably 98 to 99% of cases will never see the inside of a jury trial, that you will never get to the jury trial phase. But working up the case as if it will go to a jury trial is really how you maximize recovery in the settlement phase. And so it's important to have someone on your side who's really experienced in terms of understanding how the case needs to be worked up so that it's presented in such a way where we are not afraid to go to trial if that's where this is going, and also to have the resources to be able to do that. So that, that can be tricky. You're dealing with kind of a David and Goliath situation. These are massive Goliaths. These are large insurance companies. They are extremely powerful. They've got a lot of resources at their disposal. And same with these large corporate entities. So, when Lahmani Law or any other law firm is going up against these really, really large entities, you need to make sure that you've got the resources at your disposal to fight them in the same way that they intend to fight you. And that includes being able to retain experts, take depositions, front the costs of filing fees. This stuff can really get substantial to do it right, but it's so important to really maximize the recovery.
Wow, that is a great note to end on, Nicole. Thank you so much for your expertise, your point of view, clearly your passion about this. It's been great, and I look forward to future conversations.
My pleasure, Sean. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's it. Thanks for joining us for the inaugural issue of the Law Queen podcast. If today's conversation gave you a clearer understanding of serious injury, wrongful death, or negligence cases in California, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, maybe leave a review, or share a link to the show with someone in your world who would benefit from this information. And if you want to learn more about Nicole and Lahmani Law, visit her website, lahmanilaw.com. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.